We've been hearing about new variants of the coronavirus, one already making its way into the U.S. These new strains have led to a lot of questions. Our Sydney Stalwart sat down with an infectious disease expert to get you some answers.
We've heard of new variants of the coronavirus coming from the UK, and now one has been found in South Africa, both apparently spreading faster than what we've seen before. Dr. Neil Lamb of Hudson Alpha tells us just how concerned we should be.
All viruses mutate. They change their genetic code over time. It's just a natural process. So this should not surprise us at all.
A variant of coronavirus stemming from the UK, B117, is causing concern, and a new strain discovered in South Africa, officially called 501v2, is making headlines. So what makes these new variants different from what we've seen so far?
What's maybe worrisome, or what makes us cautious about these, number one, is that they've acquired a large number of changes pretty rapidly. And some of those changes seem to alter the genetic recipe of the virus in a way that makes it more easily transmissible. So more individuals can be infected from someone that has this particular version than a different version of the virus.
Are these variants more dangerous?
It doesn't seem to make them sicker. It doesn't seem to increase the death rate or the hospitalization rate. It just means that it spreads more easily.
There is some good news.
The effectiveness of the vaccine doesn't seem to be impacted by these particular versions, these particular variants of the virus.
So should we be making changes to protect ourselves against these new variants?
For you and I don't think it changes any of our behaviors. We continue to do the things that we know to do to slow the spread of the virus. It just means we have to be even more prepared. But does that give me fear? No, it does not.
Putting the Valley first, Sydney Stallworth, WZDX News.